It just happened. Keir Starmer has resigned live and the United Kingdom has been thrown into total political chaos. This is not a drill. This is the moment everything changed. Just minutes ago, Starmer appeared before cameras, pale and visibly shaken, delivering the shortest resignation statement in modern political history. And now Westminster is in meltdown. Phones are ringing off the hook, journalists are sprinting through Parliament's corridors, and government insiders are describing the mood as apocalyptic. If you thought the scandal was bad last week, what's happening right now is far worse. This isn't just about one man's career ending. This could take down the entire government. Monday morning, 11:59 a.m. The entire country was holding its breath. After a week of leaks, resignations, and rebellion inside his own party, Keir Starmer's future was hanging by a thread. All morning, reporters gathered outside Labour headquarters, speculating about his next move. Would he try to fight through the storm? Would he cling to power and risk humiliation at Prime Minister's questions? Or would he do the unthinkable step down? Then just before noon, black cars arrived in rapid succession. Senior Labour figures emerged, faces grim, eyes locked forward, refusing to answer questions shouted by reporters. The crowd of journalists surged forward. Something big was about to happen. At exactly 12:01 p.m, the double doors of Labour HQ opened. Starmer himself appeared flanked by aides who looked like they hadn't slept in days. The flash of cameras was blinding. A heavy silence fell as he approached the microphone. For a man known for measured, lawyerly speeches, his words were shockingly brief. For the sake of the Labour Party and the country, I am stepping down as leader with immediate effect. No excuses, no spin, no defiance. Just a final devastating full stop on his leadership. Gasps rippled through the press pack. Some reporters literally dropped their phones. Within seconds, the news hit every screen in Britain. Starmer resigns, live. Social media went into absolute meltdown. On X, #StarmerResigns was trending worldwide within 3 minutes. TikTok was flooded with clips of the moment, millions of views stacking up in real time. YouTube live streams crashed under the surge of viewers trying to watch history unfold. This wasn't politics as usual. This was a political detonation that nobody could ignore. Commentators rushed onto TV and radio to call it the biggest opposition crisis in 50 years. One political editor said what everyone was thinking. This isn't just the end of Keir Starmer, this could collapse the entire Labour machine. Inside Parliament, the shockwave was immediate. Shadow cabinet members who had been plotting behind the scenes suddenly found themselves in the open. Some were smiling, others looked like they'd seen a ghost. Emergency calls were made to union leaders, party donors and regional chairs. Labour staffers described scenes of chaos, people running through corridors, shouting across offices, clutching hastily printed resignation letters. One aide reportedly broke down in tears and had to be escorted out. A party that spent years branding itself as the grown-ups in the room now looked completely leaderless, vulnerable and fractured. Downing Street reacted instantly. Conservative strategists went into overdrive. This was their moment to seize control of the narrative. Within 15 minutes, a government spokesperson issued a statement declaring that Labour had imploded and that the country cannot afford this kind of chaos. The Prime Minister himself was reportedly preparing to address the nation within the hour, hoping to paint Conservatives as the only force of stability left in British politics. Behind closed doors, Tory MPs were literally popping champagne. One senior backbencher was overheard saying, "We didn't have to land a punch." He knocked himself out. But here's where it gets even darker and far more dangerous. Because Starmer's resignation doesn't just leave Labour without a leader, it leaves Britain without a functioning opposition at the most critical political moment in decades. Legislation is about to go through Parliament, with no one strong enough to challenge it. Key debates on the economy, immigration and foreign policy could now go unchecked. And with rumours swirling that multiple shadow ministers are about to resign too, Labour may soon face a full-scale leadership vacuum. One former party strategist called it the death spiral scenario. If they can't get control of this fast, this is the state of Britain right now. The party that claimed it would restore trust in politics has just detonated in front of the entire country. Starmer's resignation isn't the end of the story. It's the start of a political earthquake that could shake Westminster for months, maybe years. And the question everyone is asking tonight is simple. Who takes over now? Is there anyone strong enough to pick up the pieces, or is this the moment Labour collapses completely? The moment Starmer walked away from the podium, Westminster went into a full-blown feeding frenzy. Every newsroom in the country switched to rolling coverage. Helicopters hovered over Labour HQ. Political correspondents lined up outside television studios, breathlessly explaining what this means. And inside the Labour Party itself, the scramble for power began before Starmer's car even left the street. Phones buzzed non-stop as MPs, advisors, and union leaders frantically tried to figure out what comes next. One senior aide described the mood in a single word: carnage. The party was split into warring factions, each one trying to seize control before the others could move. Angela Rayner, long-tipped as the most likely successor, reportedly gathered her closest allies in a private office less than 10 minutes after the resignation. Sources say voices were raised, tempers flared, and strategy notes were scribbled on whiteboards as they mapped out how to launch a leadership campaign within hours. Meanwhile, centrist MPs pushed their own candidate behind the scenes, warning that a hard-left takeover would finish Labour for a generation. The party's left-wing faction, emboldened by Starmer's downfall, started lobbying for a total reset, demanding a new leader who would break completely from Starmer's centrist agenda. One MP was overheard muttering, "This is our chance to take the party back." But the infighting wasn't limited to Labour. The government smelled blood in the water, and Conservative MPs were openly gloating. One former cabinet minister posted a single word on X, "finished," which immediately went viral. Tory backbenchers flooded WhatsApp groups with memes mocking Labour's collapse. And in a sign of just how serious the situation had become, Downing Street insiders confirmed that the Prime Minister was preparing an emergency statement to reassure the country that stability will be maintained. Translation: they were using Labour's implosion as proof that only the Conservatives could be trusted to govern. The financial fallout hit just as quickly as the political chaos. Major party donors froze their contributions within hours, demanding clarity about who would take over before they spent another penny. One major trade union announced it was suspending all campaign funding until a new leadership team was in place. This move alone could drain millions from Labour's election war chest. Staffers panicked as talk of redundancies spread. One source claimed that campaign teams in key swing constituencies were told to pause all operations until further notice. The money drying up wasn't just a problem for the next election. It was a threat to Labour's survival right now. And then came the public reaction. Across Britain, voters were furious, confused, and glued to their screens. Call-in shows were flooded with angry Labour members who felt betrayed by their own leadership. "We backed him, we believed him, and now he's just walked away," one caller shouted live on air. Focus groups revealed a devastating picture. Even lifelong Labour voters said they were considering staying home at the next election. Social media was a storm of disbelief, memes, and raw anger. On TikTok, young voters posted videos burning their party membership cards. On Reddit, entire threads debated whether Labour could even exist in its current form by next year. Meanwhile, the international consequences started to kick in. European leaders, already nervous about dealing with a divided Britain, reportedly held emergency calls to discuss what Starmer's resignation meant for negotiations on trade and security. One EU diplomat told reporters that Brussels was deeply concerned about the political vacuum in London. Even Washington weighed in. An anonymous White House official was quoted as saying that the UK needed to resolve its opposition crisis quickly to maintain credibility on the world stage. This wasn't just a domestic scandal anymore, it was a global story. Back in Westminster, the pressure on Labour's remaining leadership team was unbearable. Calls for an emergency meeting of the National Executive Committee grew louder by the hour. Constituency Labour parties began passing no-confidence motions, not just against Starmer, but against the entire shadow cabinet. Party HQ was flooded with resignation letters from councillors and volunteers, threatening to walk away completely if the power struggle dragged on. One veteran MP summed it up bluntly: "Either we get a new leader in days, or we don't have a party left to lead." The atmosphere in London was electric and poisonous at the same time. Journalists camped outside Parliament to catch any scrap of gossip about who might step forward. Betting markets went wild, with odds changing by the minute as punters tried to guess the next Labour leader. Angela Rayner remained the favourite, but other names started to rise fast. Wes Streeting, Yvette Cooper, even Ed Miliband in a shock comeback scenario. This wasn't just a leadership race, this was a fight for the soul of the party, and the whole country was watching. By late afternoon, the situation had escalated from bad to catastrophic. Rumours began to spread that night fell on Westminster, but the chaos didn't slow down. If anything, it accelerated. As the sun went down, the Labour Party's National Executive Committee gathered for an emergency closed-door session that would decide the party's future. Security around the building was intense. Reporters weren't even allowed to get close. But leaks began to drip out almost immediately, and what those leaks revealed was explosive. The meeting wasn't calm or orderly. It was a war room. Members were shouting at each other, pointing fingers, accusing rivals of plotting Starmer's downfall for months. "This is a coup," one faction allegedly screamed. "No, see? This is a rescue mission," shouted another. At the heart of the argument was a simple, brutal question. Who leads Labour now? The party couldn't afford weeks or months of leadership drift. They needed someone to take control tonight, before the bleeding got worse. Angela Rayner reportedly argued that as deputy leader, she had the right and the duty to step up immediately as interim leader. But several senior MPs pushed back, saying the NEC should appoint a neutral caretaker figure until a proper leadership contest could be held. Names like Harriet Harman and even Gordon Brown were floated as temporary stabilisers. Every minute that passed without a decision was another minute of humiliation for Labour on live television. Outside the meeting, the press corps was camped out, freezing in the cold, but unwilling to move an inch. Every time the doors opened, cameras flashed furiously, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone's expression. A clue, any clue, about what was happening inside. The country was watching like it was the final of a World Cup. Betting odds shifted wildly as rumours swirled that Rayner had locked down enough support to take over. Then another rumour would drop, suggesting she was facing a revolt from centrists. It was political theatre of the highest order, and it was happening in real time. Meanwhile, Conservative HQ was working overtime to weaponise Labour's implosion. Government ministers lined up to appear on late-night TV, hammering the message that Britain needed steady hands on the tiller. The Prime Minister's team even hinted at the possibility of calling an early general election, daring Labour to face the public in their current shattered state. The prospect sent shockwaves through Labour MPs, many of whom were already nervously watching their constituencies slip away in overnight polling. One poll, released just before midnight, showed Labour crashing to its lowest level of support in decades, trailing the Conservatives by a staggering 22 points. Focus groups described the party as a joke, a disaster, and unfit to govern. The panic inside Labour was now total. Leaked WhatsApp messages from MPs showed a party in meltdown. Some begged colleagues to rally behind a single figure, any figure, just to stop the bleeding. Others were openly calling for a purge of Starmer's entire inner circle, accusing them of hiding the scandal until it was too late. One furious message read, "He knew, they all knew, and they let him destroy us." The language wasn't just angry, it was apocalyptic. By early morning, the NEC meeting had dragged on for hours with no resolution. Reporters began speculating that the delay meant a deal had collapsed. Twitter was ablaze with unverified claims that Rayner had walked out, that a leadership contest would be delayed until next year, even that Labour MPs were preparing to break away and form a new party entirely. The hashtag #BreakawayLabour trended for hours, with thousands of users posting mock-ups of new party logos and slogans. It was chaos layered on chaos, and the public was eating it up. At 3 a.m, something happened that sent shockwaves through the entire political world. A fresh leak hit the press, this one containing private NEC briefing notes that revealed just how bad Labour's situation really was. The documents showed that the party's finances were in critical condition. Donations had collapsed by nearly 60% in a single day. Campaign debts were mounting. One line from the leaked notes went viral instantly. Without new funding, the party cannot sustain operations beyond 6 months. It was financial doomsday. The news triggered immediate speculation that Labour might not even be able to fight the next general election properly. A scenario that would hand the Conservatives a landslide, and just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, they did. Around 6 a.m, multiple shadow ministers handed in their resignations simultaneously, releasing coordinated public statements condemning Starmer's leadership team and calling for root and branch reform of the party. Their departures left entire sections of Labour's frontbench empty. The opposition benches were now half vacant, a visual representation of just how deep the crisis had become. By sunrise, Britain was staring at something it hadn't seen in generations, an opposition party on the verge of total collapse. The country woke up to wall-to-wall coverage of Labour's implosion, with live shots of exhausted NEC members emerging from their all-night meeting. No announcement was made, no leader was named, just silence, a silence that screamed weakness. And that silence was exactly what the government wanted. The Conservatives smelled an opportunity to finish Labour off for good, and they were preparing their next move. By mid-morning, Britain had become a political pressure cooker. The media was in overdrive, dissecting every rumour, every whisper, every movement outside Labour HQ. Speculation reached fever pitch. Would Labour announce a new interim leader today, or would they allow the chaos to drag on for another news cycle? For voters, the waiting game was unbearable. People weren't just talking about politics in cafes and offices. They were glued to their phones, refreshing live feeds every 30 seconds. The country felt like it was hanging off the edge of a cliff. Then, at 10:15 a.m., the Prime Minister made his move. Stepping out onto the steps of Number 10, he addressed the nation in a carefully choreographed moment, designed to deliver maximum impact. His words were blunt and devastating for Labour. Britain needs stability. Britain needs leadership. And Britain needs it now. That's why I have advised His Majesty the King to dissolve Parliament. A general election will be held in 6 weeks from time. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Within seconds, social media erupted. Headlines flashed across every network. General election called. Labour leaderless. Inside Labour HQ, pandemonium. MPs who had been plotting for days suddenly realised they were out of time. They didn't have weeks to choose a new leader, and they barely had hours. Party staffers described the atmosphere as sheer terror. Some were screaming, some were crying, and others simply sat in stunned silence. A snap election under these conditions wasn't just risky, it was potentially fatal. Without a figurehead to rally behind, Labour risked going into a national campaign completely rudderless. One senior strategist reportedly shouted, "This is electoral suicide. We can't fight like this." Angela Rayner, now under even more pressure, reportedly began calling MPs personally, begging them to back her as caretaker leader so Labour could at least put up a fight. But the divisions were too deep. Centrist MPs resisted, warning that rushing into a coronation would alienate half the party. Left-wing MPs threatened to boycott the campaign entirely unless their demands were met. The NEC meeting, already stretched to breaking point, turned into a shouting match as members tried to hammer out a solution before the media descended on them again. Meanwhile, the Conservatives wasted no time framing the election as a choice between order and chaos. Party HQ rolled out slick campaign ads within hours, featuring Starmer's resignation speech, spliced with ominous music and the words, "Labour in crisis, Britain can't afford this." Tory ministers fanned out across the media landscape, promising stability, security and strength under their government. It was a brutal, coordinated attack, and it worked. Overnight polling showed the Conservatives surging to their highest levels of support in more than a decade. The financial situation for Labour went from dire to catastrophic. Donors who had been hesitating now slammed the door completely shut. One union announced it was redirecting its funds toward local candidates only, abandoning the national campaign altogether. The party's central office reportedly faced a shortfall so severe that staff payroll was in question. Volunteers, demoralised and furious, began resigning en masse. Constituency offices across the country shut their doors. What was supposed to be a 6-week election campaign was quickly becoming a funeral march. And yet, in the middle of all this devastation, something strange started to happen. Grassroots members, the ones who felt most betrayed, began organising independently online. TikTok and Twitter threads exploded with calls for a people's campaign to take back the party from the elites. Activists began planning rallies, crowdfunding efforts, and independent door-knocking campaigns, bypassing the official party machinery entirely. It was chaotic, uncoordinated, and risky, but it had the potential to shake things up in ways no one in Westminster expected. Still, the clock was ticking. Every hour without a clear Labour leader was another hour of free attack ads for the Conservatives. International reactions poured in as world leaders weighed in on Britain's crisis. The French president expressed concern about political instability in London. The German Chancellor bluntly stated that Britain must present a credible opposition to function as a democracy. Even the White House released a statement urging calm and clarity in the run-up to the election. Britain's crisis had gone global, and the pressure to resolve it was suffocating. By nightfall, the situation reached its dramatic